Welcome back. Today I want to talk to you about SQL-specific queries, meaning that they're queries that you can't write in the query grid, where you have the table and you can drag and drop and, manipulate things that way. These are queries that you've got to actually open up the SQL window and actually write them in the window itself. For the SQL-specific queries here, we're going to look at creating a table. Now, creating a table simply means that we're going to actually, through SQL code, create the structure of the table. Creating a table like this is not like a make table query where throw a set of data at the query and tell it make the table on the fly and then put this data in it. This one instead is going to simply create the structure of the table as though you were opening it in design view and putting in row by row and telling it what to do. But there are times when you're creating a table where you want it to be fairly temporary in nature. And so you create it, you put the data in for whatever use you need it for, and then you can drop the table, and we'll discuss that particular command at the end. So when you're creating a table, you can also alter it afterwards. So you can add a column in this case, or you can alter a column and change its field size, for example, or you could drop a particular column, or later on you can add a constraint. You can add a primary key so that you can, build the whole table just as though you were building it in design view. So let's go ahead then and go through here. At the end, we'll talk about the last command that I put on the screen here, and that's the drop table command. And then we'll show you how they work, and let's get going. Here's the database that I'm going to use today. And I've already created the queries here, and I'll put them in design view so that we can take a look at each one of them. First is this create table view. What I've done here is I want to create a table called temp log. I'm going to add an ID, and that ID is going to be a counter. Now, counter is the command in SQL for the auto number that we would normally do if we were in design view. So I'm going to make the ID a counter. I'm going to then establish a user field that's going to be a short text, and I'm going to limit it to 50 characters. I'm going to create a description field, and I'm not going to specify the number of characters here. So by default, it'll pick up 255 characters for the short text. I'll go ahead and put in an entry date, which will be a date field. So the field type here is date, then a last name of text, a first name of text, and an email address. Okay? So we'll have all of these fields here, and when we actually run this one, and there we run it, you see the table popping up right there. So let's go ahead and close the create table and open this temp log for designing, and we'll see if it did what we expected it to do. First, it did create an auto number field. It created a short text of 50, and then these by default kept their 255. We have a date time field, and we have 3 short text fields. Looks like it did what we wanted it to do. But let's go ahead and realize now that we forgot a field, okay? So what I want to do is I want to add the supervisor phone here. And to add a field, I use the alter table command, and then I can use add, and then give the field name, and then I want it to be a text field that is 10 characters long. So that is going to be the phone. So when I run that, I'm going to close it now, and I'm going to look at this in design view, and now we have supervisor phone. So you see, I'm barely clicking on it, and you can hardly even tell that it ran. This is a very, very quick way to create and build up a table just the way you want it, and alter an existing table should you need to. So now let's say, doggone, I really needed that to be 13 characters instead of 10. So let's go to modify the supervisor phone. I'll put that in design view, and I'm going to now alter a column, and it's going to be supervisor phone, and it's going to be 13 characters long instead of 10. Okay, so if I click on the run button and run that, I'll close that now. We'll take a look at the table. And now the supervisor phone, when I click on it, is 13 characters. Okay, we'll close that one now. Now, you know, after all of that thing I did with the supervisor phone, I decide that I don't want to keep it. So I can actually drop any column that I want to using the drop column command. And if I drop column, I just name the column that I want to drop. Of course, I have to start it off with the alter table command. And then so it knows what table to alter. Okay, I'm going to drop the column. So I'm going to hit the run button here. And I'm going to close that now. And let's look at temp log and make sure that that column is gone. And it is just like we expected. Okay, so the next thing, just before I show you how to drop the table, I want to show you how to add a primary key. So when I right click here and go into design view, I'm going to use the add constraint. Now, the next thing I need to do is I got to give it a name for the constraint. So temp log ID is going to be the name I give the constraint. And the constraint is going to be a primary key. And I'm going to make that primary key the ID, the name, and the email. So I'm going to make it a triple constraint there, with all three of those being unique, okay? And when I go ahead and I run this, it realizes that I don't have it realized I didn't have a name field there. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. And now when I run it, of course, there wasn't a name field. And so you can see that the errors do point you to exactly what the problem is. So in last name there was the problem. And when I close that, yeah, I'll go ahead and save that. And let's go look at temp log and see if it's got my key fields. And it does. It has email and last name and the ID up there being a composite key, a three-way key. Now, I didn't need to, of course, make a three-way key. The auto number ID would have been just adequate. But I did want to illustrate that you can make an ID out of more than just one field, okay? So as we close this, now I'm all done with this video. So I want to go ahead and clean up after myself. So maybe in your process, you're completely done with all the processing that you've done and you can delete your temp table. Well, there's a drop table command as well. And it's so very simple. Just drop table and then the name of the table. So when we run that, you see that it disappeared from over here and we're done with the video. So what we've done is very quickly look over the idea of creating a table with SQL code. There is a related method to all of these commands. In other words, you don't have to do it in SQL. You could do it in VB code as well and run all of those commands just as easily as I did in the SQL. So, and the syntax is virtually identical at the same time. So as you see this, I hope it does good for you. Hit that like button down there so we can get this video out, and we'll hope to see you again. Thanks.